Hello and welcome to my channel. In true to the spirit of this card, this is my second recording of this video because my first one was a complete failure because there was no sound at all. But that was quite a long video and I'm going to try a bit more concise this time. So this is hopefully going to be better. I'm going to talk about Seven of Pentacles, and I'm hoping, my main hope is, if it is a card you don't like, that you will maybe like it a little bit more by the end of this video. And there are two kind of approaches to this card, if you like, which I think are well illustrated by Rider-Waite and the Thoth. So I love Pamela Colman-Smith's illustration for this Rider-Waite, for the Seven of Pentacles. He's a gardener. He looks reflective. I think you could either say he looks fed up, or he just looks like he's kind of thoughtful and halfway through. He's been working hard and he's halfway through the process. His plant is doing well. Looks like a big courgette plant to me, but it isn't fruiting. And this is a common feeling, I think, during the creative process, when maybe towards the halfway point and we're feeling impatient. We want things to, we want the reward, and it's hard because I think especially in society today, we expect quick results and there's so much uncertainty in the creative process. And the gardening analogy is like a really helpful one, I think. So I love that card. That's one of my favourite in the deck. I love this card too. I think Lady Frida Harris's artwork would look beautiful on some sort of silk scarf. It reminds me of those silk scarves you get in Liberty, in the Liberty shop in London. But it is a dismal message. And Crowley doesn't seem to see this card positively at all. He's just called it failure, and he seems to have a very bleak view of failure. But what I want to do is I want to challenge that view, that failure is something to be feared or something that we should avoid. And I want to maybe talk about Kate Bush's own career and how that is a really good illustration, I think, of how failure and success are interconnected. You can't really separate the two, I think. Now, the song I've chosen is from Ariel. It is Painter's Link. It kind of, I always think of Painter's Link and Architect's Dream as the same song, really. It's about a painter. He's painting outside, and then this is the moment when it rains, and you could say his painting is ruined, or you could say sometimes things go wrong and it's a moment of, you know, beauty. And Kate Bush talks about this herself because she's often accused, is that the right word? But accused of being a perfectionist. And I think she possibly, there is that aspect to her personality. But she also says that mistakes aren't something to be avoided. That often there is a beauty in mistakes, or it's what makes something unique. I also loved the fact that this was a picture from her tour and how much bravery it took for her to start touring again after such a long break and such a big build-up. Everyone was so hyped about it. I mean, the amount of pressure she must have felt going on stage. And to do that, she didn't need to. To do that, I think just shows so much courage. And I really admired her for that. Now, I think in terms of failure, I think we sometimes fear, or I fear failure. When I was thinking, what makes me fear failure? I think it's when I think of it as an all or nothing thing. If I think of life as like an exam, and there are moments where you think, well, I've either passed or failed at that. And also thinking that we can judge things that objectively. And looking at Kate Bush's career, and one of the things I absolutely love. Now, I haven't looked. This Kate Bush Tower has encouraged me to read a lot more about Kate Bush and to think about her work with far more sort of intensely. And I haven't really delved this deep into her work since I was in my late teens, early 20s. So it's been really interesting process for me. And I don't love every single thing, every single song. There are some songs that I probably wouldn't choose to listen to. I used to, so for example, I used to love Violin as a child. I used to, I said in my Babushka video that Never Forever was the first Kate Bush album I ever listened to, and I was, probably 6 or 7 or something. And I used to play violin, and that was the one that I always used to, because we had an LP, I'd get to that and dance around the room. And there is a real childlike energy. If you watch and I'll put a link because it's fantastic. There is that is weird and wonderful. It is her in the 1979, I think, Christmas special dancing to violin. If you haven't seen it, you are in for a treat. And it's full of this childlike energy. But it's a song that I feel now is a little bit one-dimensional, and it's not one of her best. But that's what I like about Kate Bush, is that inconsistency. I like the fact, I think a less interesting artist would have produced things that were a little bit more consistent, a little bit more samey. But because she takes risks, and because she's kind of always growing and changing, she does things that don't work. And I suppose that is another thing, is to think that we can try and avoid failure, but then we don't really grow. We don't really, in a way you could say the avoidance of failure is a failure in itself, because it suggests we're living we're risk adverse, we're living a cautious life. So if I think of the people that don't seem to fail much in their life, or certainly don't have many public failures, they are maybe often people that are probably not that adventurous, or are doing what they're good at and what they feel safe doing. And that's fine. That is a choice, but it's not a particularly creative choice, I would say. So if you're living a creative life, failure is part of it. And the other interesting thing, I think, is to, as I said, I think in the past I've thought of failure or success as a one-off event. But in a way, usually there's a mix. So, for example, if we take something like the line, the cross, and the curve, I think that video that she did, or film she did rather, is a real mixed bag. The music is beautiful. I don't really like a lot of the acting in it. And I think Kate Bush herself would say it, maybe it was rushed. She didn't spend as long as she would have liked on the storyline and things. And it wasn't quite what she'd hoped for. And, as I say, it's not a complete failure, because there's enjoyable parts of it. There's some bits that are really good. But I think a lot of what we do is kind of a mix. It's a mix of failure and success. And then we learn again through the next stage. And what we do, I think that personally, I sometimes think that Kate Bush overcorrects what she does. So I don't really like the director's cut album, but that was probably because I knew the original songs, and I love, for example, I love the Sensual World album. I'm not so keen on the Red Shoes, but I think when I listen to the director's cut, I prefer the original versions. Maybe it's because of what I'm used to. You know, maybe if I'd heard those other versions, you know, I'd be saying something different. I love the trio Bulgarka, so anything with them in it. And so I think sometimes she goes back and corrects her work, where for me, personally, as a listener, it's not necessary. But, you know, that's something she can do as an artist. And that you could say that's a brave thing in itself, to say, well, I wasn't happy with that, and I'm going to go back and try something different. So I feel like I keep saying this in every single video I make, but Kate Bush is a great role model for anyone living a creative life. And I think because she has had such a long career, there's a lot of examples and a lot of things that you can think of. And I'd be interested what you think about that, looking at Kate Bush's career. If there's any particular moments you think where, you know, which represent or show her attitude to success and her bravery. Right, just for the last minute, I am going to quickly talk about the original recording. So if you don't want to hear about that, because it involves me talking about the original person singing on the track. So if you don't want to hear his name, which is very understandable, just turn off now. Right, so I'm just going to say the last aspect of Think of Failure, which is something that I sometimes need to remind myself, because it depends what sort of personality you are, but when I fail, I tend to think it's completely my fault. It's not down to bad luck, and it's not down to someone else's behaviour. And the original recording of this from Ariel was Rolf Harris, who in his 80s was convicted of sexual offences, really horrible, and yes, imprisoned. And she now had these songs, middle of the side of a concept album. So pretty difficult to take those songs away from that album. And also, why should she? Because, you know, it's been coloured by this horrible association, but that's not her work or anything to do with her or her fault. So why should she get rid of those songs? So I think I really like the mixed views about the fact that she then chose Bertie, and Bertie sang and spoke Rolf Harris's part instead. And some people have said that it was a shame because Bertie was a lot younger. His voice was a lot younger, and they'd imagined the painter as someone older. And I do know what they mean, because I'd imagined that too. But I wonder, and this is just my thought, because of course I can't know Kate Bush's motivations, but it's almost like there's something really horrible, that association. And by choosing someone who was so precious and loved by her, it almost cancels that association out. Like almost like that love for her son was powerful enough to then erase, as best she could, I suppose you can't really, but you know, to erase that association of the song and to recreate it, to make it something new and positive with her son there. So I think, yeah, that is in itself is an interesting thing, as I said, about failure and how we, not failure because of course it wasn't her, down to her, but just sometimes awful things happen and they're out of our control. And how do we respond to that? How, as you know, thinking of life as a process, do we adapt? Do we still move forward? What do we do? So those are my thoughts. I'll finish there because it's still getting a little bit long, this video, and I'll be interested to hear what you think. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye.